Hey crafty friends, it's Joy here for Scrapbook.com, and today I created a very distressed and shimmery card for New Year's. So I'm going to start with a piece of A2 size mixed media white cardstock. I am using the Falling Stars layering stencil from Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz, and then some Cloud Whip. This is going to be the background to our card, and so I want to get this Cloud Whip on here so that way it has time to dry while I'm working on my other elements. I am gently laying the stencil over. It is kind of laying on top of some of the other stars. I'm a little bit impatient, and I wasn't really worried if some of the stars got a little bit messed up because we're going to be covering up a lot of that background. But if that's not something you want to do, let the one side dry and then you can do the second side. Then I have die cut the 2025 numbers. I'm adhering those to some mint tape so I can stencil those as well. Those numbers are from the Bold Numbers with Flowers dies, and there's also some coordinating stamps. I did not use that in this video, but I did want to mention that there is coordinating stamps for these. So I'm going to place my stencil over just two of the numbers at a time, and again using that Cloud Whip and a palette knife, I am going to get these numbers stenciled so I can put those aside to dry. Now Cloud Whip does dry pretty quick. I'm also making sure I'm not doing too thick of a layer. I'm making sure I'm scraping that stencil nicely so it has a nice thin layer and it won't take forever to dry. So now that those are done, I can set those aside and we can start working on the stars for our card. I am using stars from the Nested Stars dies. I'm inking this one up with Picked Raspberry. I'm going to be inking the other two with Tumbled Glass and Prize Ribbon. We're going to do a ton of distressing because these colors are so super bright, but we're going to kind of distress everything, give it tons of shimmer. You already have seen the texture that we're going to be adding, and this card turns out so fun. I'm going to be using coordinating colors of Distress Spritz for each one of these stars. So Picked Raspberry, this is Prize Ribbon, and then I'll be using Tumbled Glass for that third star. I'm also going to be using Fossilized Amber Distress Spritz because I love it. It's one of my favorite colors. It has a really nice gold color to it, and gold is my favorite, so I want to use it on everything. So I'm going to bring that in now and spritz that all over the background. I'm going to do that for all three of these stars. Then now that that background with the star stencil is dry, I'm ink blending that with Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink, and I want it to be a little bit splotchy. I'm not worried about it being perfect. I'm also going to spritz it with a distress sprayer and just tap that water off. I will be spritzing this with the Fossilized Amber Distress Spritz as well, which adds that really nice gold color to the background. I'm going to put that aside to dry. And once that's dry, I decided I'm going to bring in some vintage photo. I wanted it to be more distressed, so I'm going to add a little bit of that around the edges of the background. I'm going to add that to the edges of the stars. Off camera, I did use the Hickory Smoke on the edges of the stars, but it just wasn't enough for me, so I brought in that vintage photo. And because I am ink blending after I've spritzed the background, I am going to spritz these again, because that ink kind of dulls down the shimmer from the spritz. So I'm going to put that back, all of these back in my splatter box and spritz them one more time. First, I am going to add the vintage photo to these cute little, this banner, the star banner. This is from the Celebration banners. There are little stars that you can die cut separately and adhere to this. I didn't need to do that. This is going to be kind of a background piece, but I do want them to have some color. So again, vintage photo, and then I can finish spritzing everything. So these little star banners are going to be spritzed with the vintage photo Distress Spritz. And then, like I mentioned, I'm going to do those stars again. So I'm going to repeat the stars and the background. So more Fossilized Amber on the background. The stars, I'm going to do their coordinating colors one more time. And then I'm also going to add the Fossilized Amber one more time. I would not have needed to do this if I had distressed the edges first. Then I could have just spritzed it one time. Really wasn't a big deal to do it again, but I just wanted to let you guys know that if you ink blend the edges first, you only have to spritz it one time. So let's bring that back in there and do the fossilized amber on all of those stars. Now that the stencil or the cloud whip is dry on my numbers, I am going to use fossilized amber Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to blend that on the numbers. I will also use the vintage photo to give that a little bit more of a distressed look, and we're also going to spritz these. So I think everything gets spritzed. Everything has some shimmer and shine to it, which I think is really fun. So I'm just taking my dome foam tool, blending tool here, and just adding a little bit to the edges, a little bit to the numbers, nothing crazy, but just a little something else. I wanted to dull down the fossilized amber ink just a little bit. Now I'm going to put these in my splatter box as well, and I will be spritzing with fossilized amber first. Then I'm going to spritz a little bit of vintage photo, and while it's still wet, add some more fossilized amber. It kind of blended together because it was wet, and I really liked how that looked. It gave it a little bit more of a grungy gold look, so I think it turned out super nice. I'm going to set those aside to dry as well. Let's start our background. I'm going to adhere the stars down with some liquid glue. And I actually decide on the other two stars, I need to do tape runner and liquid glue. Because this background is so textured, I want the instant hold of a tape runner and then the strength of the liquid glue once that dries. I did not do that on the big star, but the other ones I did, and that seemed to hold really nicely. I am placing the stars where they are hanging off the card panel just a little bit, and I'll trim all of that excess off. Now let's bring in those star banners, and I'm just going to drape those across. I wanted more texture, more stars, more celebration for the new year, so I thought it would be fun just to add these as a little something extra. So I'm using my liquid glue, holding it with reverse tweezers, which just keeps your hands out of the glue, which is really nice. And then I can glue this down. As you can see, I'm only gluing the top piece. I don't mind that the stars lift up a little. I feel like that gives it a little bit of dimension, gives it that extra texture look, because everything is not directly adhered down. So now that we have all of that done, I can trim off the excess. And then I do want my numbers to be popped up with some foam adhesive. So I'm going to add 2mm foam adhesive to the back here of each one of the numbers. And again, because we are adhering this to a textured background, an inked up background, everything's spritzed, I'm going to add some dots of glue to my foam adhesive just for that extra hold. I'm going to line up the 20 at the top, just offsetting the numbers a little bit from each other, and then the 25 will be at the bottom, offset from the 20 and then offset from each other, just the tiniest bit. And I think that gives it a little bit more of a visual interest. I love these big bold numbers because they fill up the card so nicely. You can have all this fun background detail, but the numbers are front and center, which I think is just a lot of fun on this card design. Then I'm going to stamp my sentiment. I had stamped a sentiment. I didn't love how it looked, so I'm going to redo that sentiment. It's from the Hello Winter stamp set, and it says Happy New Year, and I'm going to stamp that using the Misty, and I'm using the Hickory Smoke ink. I'm also going to spritz this. You don't see my hand in the video because it's back really far. I'm using fossilized amber Distress Spritz because I wanted a really soft mist. So my hand was out of the camera shot, but I was spritzing it softly. Then some foam adhesive behind that sentiment. I'm going to line that up on that pink star there. Then we can take a look at this up close. Look at all of that shimmer from the Distress sprays. I think it's so beautiful. Those numbers are gorgeous with that stenciled stars on the background using the cloud whip. The background is so much fun. I love that Hickory Smoke neutral background. And then of course, all of the stars. I think this card turned out so fun. Thank you guys so very much for stopping by and watching. I hope that you enjoyed this project, and I hope you guys have a really wonderful day.